Eagles, Packers. We took the Eagles, thank God. A bit of a nervous cover on that one with the Packers driving down 12 points to finish off the game. But from what I saw from both sides, number one, if the Detroit Lions were playing in that game against the Eagles, they would have killed them by 30 points. That was my first takeaway. And number two, the Packers, and Josh Jacobs played a pretty good game. If they cannot run the ball consistently and dominate in the running game, Jordan Love and the rest of that offense completely collapses. And I understand they had some injuries to Dobbs and to Christian Watson, their receivers, but if he is not operating within complement to the running game, and I understand that's a lot of ways the quarterbacks operate, but Jordan Love is not that good. Let's call it like we see it. They dominated Dallas last year. Fine, and they took people by surprise, but there is no doubt in my mind that he has regressed in some sense from last year to this year.
And I think a lot of Packer fans, Homer Packer fans, let me rephrase, will say that he's kind of been hurt since that Brazil game. If you were to go all the way back to week one, Jordan Love suffered an injury. Malik Willis came in, started a couple of games. Came in, started a couple of games. But I'm not making excuses. This is a quarterback you paid for $60 million a year. And I told you last segment, I wonder if Packer fans are starting to hold their receipts. I wonder if Packer fans are starting to go, maybe we should have let him play out that final year of the contract until we offered him $60 million guaranteed. Now, that's what winning in the playoffs will do. And give him his flowers where they're due. He played a great game in Dallas, but Colin, I want to say, I think he struggled in that Niner game, too. Let's not forget he threw a game-ending interception, and there was a chance for the Packers to win that game in the, I believe, the NFC divisional round game right before the championship, the NFC championship. So I could argue Jordan Love has almost not played well for a full calendar year. The injury doesn't help, but you got to be the reason. With $60 million a year, you got to be the reason your team is in these games and has a chance to win them at the end. And with 3 interceptions to no touchdowns and 200 yards passing, you are the reason, young man, why your team lost that game.
Jalen Hurts went a full hour of real time with in-between completions on offense. He played a safe game. He played a complimentary game because that's what Jalen Hurts is. He'll manage the game. He's not going to make a mistake. He's going to run for a first down here and there. He's not going to blow the top off. And that offense didn't necessarily not a lot to write home about either. But if you're going to be Jordan Love, you got to make a decision on what type of quarterback you want to be. Do you want to be the guy that's going to take the top off the defense and try to win you games, play like Aaron Rodgers, and throw guys open and the whole 9 yards? Or you're going to be somebody like Jalen Hurts, who I know he's had his bad games and his fair share, but at least he's self-aware about where he is on that totem pole of that offense. Jalen Hurts is there to complement the game. He is not there to dictate the game. He is there to complement the running game. He is there to complement all the great playmakers that they have on offense with that great offensive line. Jordan Love, it's time to make a decision on what type of quarterback you want to be. And I think the fact that we're basically 2 seasons of him being a starting quarterback and we still don't know is mildly concerning, especially with how bad he played yesterday.
And it seems like LaFleur was kind of holding back on the play calls. I mentioned earlier kind of coaching with training wheels. Not calling.
And they didn't have a couple of receivers, so there's something.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Watson wasn't available, but the argument I heard from Packer fans, Colin, is that we do things the right way. We're not going to pay the receivers. We're going to draft well. We're going to use our 4th-round picks, our 3rd-round picks. So I can't necessarily take that seriously when Packer fans go, "Oh, we were without this guy," because isn't your quarterback that you're paying $60 million and went to bat for a year ago, isn't your quarterback supposed to elevate the guys around him? So that's kind of why I can't take that serious, but point noted.
I mean, if you're sitting there as a Packer fan and you're not at least asking questions about what Jordan Love can possibly offer you in a big game when things are not clicking, Jordan Love is a play-action, complementary quarterback, and I don't think he knows that, and I don't think he plays like that. At least Jalen Hurts plays within the confines that offense gives him, and I don't know if the upside is really there with that Eagle offense, because I think there's something to be said about their upside, but at least he knows. I think it may be a delusion with that Packer head coaching, that Packer brass, and also with Jordan Love on what he is. He is not Aaron Rodgers. He is not going to be Aaron Rodgers. I understand it's just one game, and I understand maybe it's just a bad season, second season under starter, but you're paying him $60 million a year. He cannot be the game plan on how to beat you, and he is, and he has been. So I'm a little down on Jordan Love as well with how bad he played in Philadelphia. And I understand it's not a very winnable game.
Kyle, can I say something here about Jordan Love that might upset Packer fans? He's had, in his 2 years as a starter for the Packers, I think he's had 5 good games, and that netted him a $60 million a year contract.
He's probably had a little bit more than
But you
5
get, partner, you get what I'm saying. From Christmas Eve, from last year Christmas Eve to the end of the playoffs. Now, I just said he kind of played bad against San Francisco through the game-ending interception, only had an 194 passing. But
they were in the game.
They were, but Kyle, you lost on Monday Night Football at New York, and then you lost to Tampa Bay at home back in 2023. You won against Carolina. You won against Minnesota. You won against Chicago. You were one of the hotter teams heading in to the playoffs. You won in Dallas, 4 games. You lost at San Francisco, 5. Obviously, if he doesn't have Colin, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to point out. If he doesn't play good in those 5 games, he doesn't get the contract. But the grand overall scheme and point I'm trying to make, he played good for 5 games. What happened in kind of the rest of those other games? And to your point, he probably played pretty decent enough in a lot of those other games. But for that 5-game sample size, that netted him $60 million a year. Fascinating stuff.
It is bizarre. And the Packers all year, a team that could never punch above their weight class, losing twice to Minnesota, losing twice to Detroit, losing in a bad game against Chicago, escaping the other, losing to Philly twice. Of the 6 games you played against teams that are probably going to be in the second round of the postseason, you went 0-6. You went 0-6.
Mm-hmm.
You beat Houston in your building, and now it took the worst game of C.J. Stroud's career to escape. Took you beating the Rams, and that Ram team was playing with Mike and I at receiver. So I cannot write home about those 2 wins when the other 6 games against the 2 against Minnesota, 2 against Detroit, and I understand you played well against Detroit in that Thursday night game after Thanksgiving. But in that Eagle game too, where you in it in Sao Paulo, sure. But you cannot go 0-6 in those games. If you have an inability to punch above your weight class, you're pretty limited offensively. You're pretty limited as a ceiling.
And I think maybe the tone needs to be changed on the whole skill weapon situation in Green Bay. Maybe you go out and get a elite wide receiver. They
need an elite player.
Kyle, they went out and got an elite running back, right? Jacobs was top 5 running back this year statistically, and how important he was to his team. Correct.
He's the most player on that
so
team.
Maybe go out and get a receiver. I mean, you don't have to give Justin Jefferson money, but go out and get a veteran wide receiver that could come in and fix the group a little bit, because one thing's for certain, you can't rely on Christian Watson in a 17-game season.
And I think there's going to be some soul searching from Matt LaFleur and company in terms of what this team really is and what you want this team to be, because I think there's
the identity offensively. Colin, the identity offensively.
There is some disconnect with what they think they can be and what they are. And I think you saw that because of their inability to beat big-time teams. But if there's another team that can punch above their weight class, that fights above their weight class, and that can win above their weight class, it's the Washington Commanders. We'll get into them next. It's Russo and Rizzo on ESPN 106.3.
Live from the Anajar and Levine Accident Attorney Studios. Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Call 1-800-747-FREE. This is ESPN 106.3.